after that moment, I remember just being very perverted in my mind. I remember like I felt like my innocence was ripped away. I remember feeling very unclean, feeling dirty, and without value. And I'm just gonna take a break.
No, go ahead.
So so after that, I remember becoming very sexual, like having this sexual rise in me, or just wanting to do things.
And this is as a young girl?
As a young girl, like
So,
5, 6, 7, 8.
That's crazy. So,
Nope.
take your time.
I just remember as a little girl just wanting someone to look up to, just wanting someone strong to protect me.
Where was your dad? Like, obviously your mom knew about this. She got upset about it. She wasn't able to keep this kid away from you because the way you guys were living, apartments. But what was your dad's reaction to this?
So my dad, my mom actually, like years later, when I was a little older, my mom told me that she told my dad, but he didn't believe her. So I had stabbed my mom, and this is the first time I cried out to God. I remember going up to my room, closing the door, and being really scared because I'm like, my mom's gonna kill me. She's gonna kill me. Something bad, terrible is gonna happen to me. And so I remember just crying because I felt so bad of what I did, and so much shame. I wanted to die. I didn't want to be here, because I saw no love in my life, and I was so frustrated because I wanted that. I wanted my parents to love each other and to love me and stick up for me, and so I wasn't getting this. And so I remember just crying out to God in my room. And I started to receive the gospel, and she started opening the Bible to me and started to pour the scriptures to me. And I remember like seeing the words of God and just being like, wow, God said that? Like God said, if you lie, you're going to go to hell? What? I'm really going to go to hell, Like I deserve hell. And so I was scared, honestly. I was like, man, what do I do? And so my sister had shared to me, Jesus did it on the cross. He took your sin. And I saw her. Like, she was so supportive when I went. Because I know I had, I put her through so much, just stuff. And, I did stuff to her that was messed up. And so, I'm very happy that she was able to go and support me. And we started going together on Sundays, and we're there receiving, and I'm seeing her answer altar call and her get delivered.
Amen.
Like her just, like I would see her just crying in the altar, just crying because she's been through her own stuff. She has her own testimony. She's the way that she is because of whatever happened to her when she was little, and so she looks at me, she's like, dang, glad changed. He looked good. And when she said, I was like, girl, I don't buy him. So I had to make it obvious, like, girl, you.
Dibs, I got dibs.
Yeah, because, it be crazy now in these generations. You got to claim your fish, So I felt like God put me in a sticky situation, And so that's the backstory, y'all. So, gotta make yourself clear sometimes. But anyways, I remember one night, I don't know if it was the night before the abortion or something like that, but I was hearing a voice saying, kill it. I turned off the lights, getting ready to go to bed, and I hear a voice in my room saying, kill it, kill it, kill it. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I'm like, who is saying that? That's
that
not
demon that you summoned with the Ouija board.
And so when I hear that, I sit up on the side of my bed, and this voice comes out of me, and it says, "Devil, get away from me. I'm not gonna kill this child. I'm gonna have this child." And when I said that, I was like, did I just say that?
Welcome back to another episode of LifeSpeaksPodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to give a shout out to the Choosing Hope Foundation. Go to the website choosinghopefoundation.org. See what they're doing over there, man. Wrapped around prison ministries, just doing big things out there. Check it out if you want to donate, or if you just want to see, or if you just want to just check it out and see what can happen. Hey, just see it, see what can happen. Check out LifeSpeaksPodcast.com and be up on the info about our podcast. And thank you so much for watching. If you want to donate, you have an option on there. Next, the Potter's House, GRA.com with our church, Universal Church in Universal City, Greater Randolph area, 2025 Universal City Boulevard. Come and check us out, see how God's moving. Let's check out the website. Once again, it's thepottersHouseGRA.com. And, man, just see how God is just moving over there. And it is awesome. Like, subscribe to our podcast, ring the bell so you get all the notifications. And thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Daniel. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Liz.
Hello.
Today we have another good episode for
Yes.
you. We're joined by Ivette.
Hello, y'all.
The better half to Glad.
Yes, yes, the better half.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Are you ready?
I'm
Are
ready.
you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. After hearing Glad give his, are you ready to come in with some rebuttals?
Yes.
Tell us the real stories.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just start, from your childhood. Just tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your upbringing.
So I was born and raised in New Jersey in a city called Passaic. Not that many Mexicans. I am Mexican. My parents immigrated here to the United States. And I just grew up, my mom and my dad also were previous divorced.
Different, like divorced from each other, or had other relationships divorced from those?
Yes. So
Okay.
they had previous marriages, and then they ended up getting divorced. And so my dad had 2 kids prior in his first marriage, and then my mom had 4.
Okay.
And so yeah, my family is pretty blended. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, my parents had me and my brother, Salvador, but we call him Chavo. And
is he older or are you older?
He's older than me.
Okay, so you're the baby.
Yeah, I'm the youngest from everybody, and it's a big age gap. So the youngest of the previous marriages is 15 years apart. So everyone else is like a lot older, 40, 50, like it's crazy. So like seeing older people, I'm like, they're my brother and my sister.
Okay,
So,
yes.
So yeah, I love living in New Jersey, very city. I remember growing up in apartments and buildings. And so my first memory of living, it was like living in an apartment building. And I remember it was brick, old, and a lot of people, a lot of noise, a lot of buses passing through, and music and the bodegas and all of this. So very different culture to what I've seen in my life in Texas and California. And so it was very different. A lot of people, fast. The life is very fast. Almost like here, San Antonio, like very fast, very on a rush. And so everyone doesn't have a time for you. It's pretty, I think one of you guys said it before, very straightforward, mean. And so I grew up with that hard, people are very tough. And so I remember I don't know if I was 4 or 5, probably like pre-K age. That's when I was abused sexually, and so it was pretty.
Do you remember it?
Yes.
At that age, you do remember?
Yeah, and I remember there was a lot of kids. My mom was watching a lot of kids, and kids that were part of the family, and one of the kids just violated me. And
was he the same age or a little older?
Older. And I was fortunate that my mom actually found me. She found me.
Okay.
So I remember she was so mad. She grabbed the kid and was like, "What did you do?" Like, you know, I actually just talked to my mom about it, like, recently. We were talking about it, and she was saying, like, I want to kill him. Like, I wanted to stab him. And it was pretty rough. My mom couldn't really do much to protect me from the child, so I had to continually see him later on. And he would try to violate me again. So...
Was it just you, or do you know if he tried violating other kids?
No, I don't know if he tried violating other kids, but I knew that he was trying to violate me.
Was he a teenager or just a young boy?
Young boy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And still aggressive.
Yeah. Persistence. Yeah. And that was pretty rough. And I would try to get him in trouble. Like I started like fight back, like, you know, and do stuff. So, but growing up, I had a lot of hate towards my mom for lack of protection, for lack of, I wasn't able to I wasn't able to feel safe. I didn't feel protected.
Is it because of just that moment or because of other situations?
I think everything. Yeah. And after that moment, I remember just being very perverted in my mind. I remember, like, I felt like my innocence was ripped away. I remember feeling very unclean, feeling dirty, and without value. And I'm just going to take a break.
No, go ahead.
So, yeah, so after that, I remember becoming very sexual, like having this sexual rise in me, or just wanting to do things.
And this is as a young girl?
As a young girl, like
so,
5, 6, 7, 8.
That's crazy. So aside from the violation from this young boy, did you know what sex was?
No, I had no idea. That was my first. I was very young, probably like 4 or 5.
So so after, and you're talking about these urges and kind of these feelings that you had, like you didn't really even know what it was, but you had this.
Yes.
Okay.
It just goes to show the doors that were open spiritually, that even as a young kid, not your decision, but these doors were forced open for you, and you're battling these things, and you don't even know.
Yeah.
You don't even know what this is. You know what I mean? But why are you having these desires? And you know what I mean? Yeah.
And I remember like something switched in me. And I honestly think that this kid had like demons, like demonic spirits, because it wasn't just perversion. It wasn't just sexual immorality. It was anger and homosexuality. So I started, what I started doing was wanting to kiss girls. So I started kissing girls my age.
And what age was this?
I don't know. I was just like 7, 8, probably like all throughout. And it stopped when I became a little older, because I was like, I don't want to do this. I did it when I was very little because this was just what was done to me. And I didn't do it in a way where I wanted to hurt anyone. I just did it. And it like had control over me. And not until like I realized I don't want to do this, I stopped doing it. And so for a really long time, I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this stuff because I don't want it. I don't want it in my life. And so, but in this building, I'm sorry.
So your mom, your parents, like did they know that this was going on? They didn't see any of it? You just kept it on?
Yeah.
hidden.
Yeah. And I remember in this building, like growing up in this building, it was the first time I saw my parents argue. And, well, I didn't see them. I could hear them. And it was like black, and I could hear screaming, and my mom and my dad were going at it. And me and my brother, we were crying because we didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, sorry.
It's scary.
And so, yeah, but besides all of that, I remember my brother was in the military. He was Army. He, not traveled. He's the youngest from my dad's side. And I was very close to him. I loved him. I would sleep in his little, foldable bed from the military.
Oh, the cot?
Yeah, I remember him going to just boot camp, and I had a really close relationship with him, and I just loved him. And I remember as a little girl, just
Nope.
Take your time.
I just remember as a little girl just wanting someone to look up to, just wanting someone strong to protect me.
Where was your dad? Like, obviously your mom knew about this. She got upset about it. She wasn't able to keep this kid away from you because the way you guys were living, apartments. Yeah. But what was your dad's reaction to this?
So my dad, my mom actually, like years later, when I was a little older, my mom told me that she told my dad, but he didn't believe her. And so I don't know why. I mean, I could imagine why, like I know why, but that lack of protection and action in my family is what led to my rebellion, and so, and just a lot of issues in the future.
Yes, that rejection, yeah.
And so, I just, and so, unfortunately, when my mom told me that, I didn't react, going through all of this, I didn't know how to react. I was just going through it because I didn't know how to process things at such a young age.
Absolutely, yes.
And so not until I was older was I able to understand, not until I came to the Lord, obviously, but going back, I remember like longing for my brother, longing for my dad. I remember just when my dad, he would work a lot. So that's another thing. Like he wasn't really home. He was trying to provide. My mom was home trying to take care of us. And once we got a little older, my mom started working, and then we moved around. And I remember we moved. Passaic is a low income city. So we lived in another building, and there was a lot of violence in my parents' relationship. They never got married. And so I remember them getting into arguments, and I didn't know why they were getting into arguments. But I remember my mom grabbing a phone from the wall. You remember those phones that were on the wall? That, had the phone on it. I remember one time my parents were just like going at it, screaming and, being loud with each other. I remember my mom grabbing that phone and just throwing it in my dad's head. And I don't know if I remember blood, but it was pretty bizarre as a child seeing that. And as a child, I didn't react anymore. I was just like, I guess that's normal, I just like, okay, this is life.
Yeah.
But I started detesting marriage and relationships. I started detesting the thought of love and being with someone. I started to reject it, started to reject a lot of things. And so then my dad started working. He got another job, and this job started paying him very well. So my parents ended up buying a house in a different state in Pennsylvania next to it. And my parents' marriage started getting worse because my dad wouldn't come certain weekends, and he worked out of state as well. So he would work in New Jersey and then drive back to PA. Mm-hmm. And whenever it would snow, he would just stay there. And I could see my mom was miserable. I could tell she didn't want to be with him. They would argue, they would fight. There was no type of relationship. And my dad started sleeping in the living room, and she would sleep somewhere else. And although we had this huge home and they were able to rent a part of the home to other people, it was like I don't know how to explain it. So in the East Coast, there's like properties with rentals next to them. Mm-hmm. So that was basically what my parents had purchased. And so, you know, they were good financially, you know, and yet here goes their marriage, just horrible, fighting. And at the time, I would say I was okay as a kid. I wasn't really much rebellious. I was doing pretty okay in school. I was never like giving teachers
You're in, like,
a hard
elementary?
time. Yeah, I was like, when we moved there, I was probably like 3rd grade.
Oh, okay, so you're still pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I never gave my parents a hard time or anything like that. I was still fairly young, and so then. But I had built up a relationship with a girl in my school. And we were very close, and we would always hang out. We would do everything together. I was always with her, and I loved her so much. And one day I remember we went to her house, and we were in her room, and we were by ourselves. And I remember hearing a voice saying, "Kiss her, kiss her, kiss her," very loud, to the point where I was like, "Who's that? Who's saying that? Who's saying that?"
Oh my goodness!
And for years, I didn't struggle with that, but now it's coming back.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing it and saying like, "No, that's my best friend. Like, I don't want to do that to her. I don't want to kiss her. She's gonna feel so weird. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to do that to her." So I remember just telling her, "I gotta go." So I ran home. And I ran home, and I was like, I didn't go back. And I probably didn't talk to her until like way later on. But that was one of the first times that I had that like homosexual tendency trying to come back, trying to get a hold of me, and just me trying to fight it and not wanting it in my life. I didn't want it in my life. And so my dad ended up getting laid off. He ended up losing his job. His company left. And so my parents had to foreclose the home. And so it was a blessing and a curse, because going to a different state, I lost my whole family in New Jersey. All of my sisters, all of my brother, all of these people that I loved. And that created a relationship like block. I remember when we moved to PA, they didn't see me the same. Like, I felt like there was this kind of like disconnect, like a relationship that just didn't get to grow. I didn't get to grow up with my cousins and all of these relationships. So I didn't know these people for years. And so going back, I wanted to regain that. I wanted to have these relationships, and I wanted my family. But we ended up living in a really, really like small apartment and very poor.
And you're back in New Jersey now?
Yeah, we're back in New Jersey.
What age is this?
I was in 5th grade. No, 6th grade. I'm sorry. So I'm starting to be a teenager, and the hormones are starting to kick in, and I'm starting to be more rebellious. And I remember feeling a lot of rejection from my family, from people very close to me. I could tell that they didn't really want me there, or they kind of just...
Why do you think?
I don't know. It could be many things, but...
Do you think because they were a little bit older, so this is now their early 20s, do you think it was like now their freedom and now you're just like this little cousin that's around? Or?
I think that is why. I think because there's like age, and then also I was in the culture is very different. So where I ended up moving in PA is very slow, white. I went to the all-white school. And so going back, there's all of these Latinos, Hispanics, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, like all these kinds of people, Arabs. And so it was just very different. And even the girls, like, they would kind of look at me like, I don't want to be your friend. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess this is how people act. So, and they didn't know me. A lot of these kids are like, who's this new girl? So it was kind of hard trying to build those relationships, building relationships in middle school. And so as time went on, I'm trying to think here, trying to gather my thoughts. So I didn't really have much going on in middle school. Nothing really. Actually, yeah. So I remember my mom and I not seeing eye to eye. I remember giving her such a hard time and not wanting her, pushing back on her more, because back in Pennsylvania, I would tell her, Mom, I know you don't I remember having a conversation with her and telling her, I know you don't want to be with my dad. Why don't you just leave him? You're not even married to him. He's not claiming you as his wife. Just leave.
Oh, so they never actually were married?
No.
Oh, okay,
legally.
okay.
And I would tell her, I'm like, Mom, just leave Dad. Why are you with this guy? You're not happy. You're miserable. You're here crying. You're all depressed, So I would tell her this. And she would be like, you don't understand. Like, you have all of this, like, meaning the house and the comforts. And I'm like, this is not everything. This, having a house, having things is not everything. Like, I see you guys not having peace. I'm growing up seeing you guys be miserable. So I guess me getting older, I started to feel resentment towards her and bitter towards her. And I didn't want to listen to her. And we were in a car when I was 13, and she was trying to get me to do stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. So she starts hitting me. And when she starts hitting me, I grab a pen and I just start stabbing her. And so full on rebellion, full on retaliation there. And
were your parents, were they physical with each other? Like, where do you think the violence came from?
I've never seen my dad be violent towards my mom, but I've always seen my mom be violent towards my dad.
Okay, yeah, because the phone, and then
yeah.
So do you think that that created some kind of resentment as well? Or like,
yes.
Just
yes.
I mean, you have this skewed view of your mother.
Yeah.
Right. Just from. I mean, so do you think that? Like, did you have an idea in your head of what a mother should be, and she wasn't that? Like, I'm trying to just understand, like, what your thoughts were on your mom. Like, what was?
I feel like, I don't know. I guess I wanted her to make stands, in the dynamic of a house. Because as a woman, you're a housekeeper. Mm-hmm. You set the tone for the house, for the home, the loving home, the tender home. And there was none of that.
Did she seem like she was a pushover for your dad almost, or?
Yes. He did so many things. Like, she didn't know how much he would make. He wouldn't ask her questions. She wouldn't like try to ask any of his information. Like, she really just let him get away with stuff. And so growing up, I'm like, why are you letting him, just do whatever he wants or treat you the way that he wants, like by being cold. And my dad as well, he never really said I love you to me and my brother. He was not loving. He wouldn't really spend much time with us. He would just focus on work. you know.
Was your mom affectionate with you guys too, or?
She was.
Okay.
But I was very resistant to her affection. I was very not able to receive it. I don't know why, but I just wasn't able to take it in because of what happened to me when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like you still cared more for her than your father, as far as like, it seems like your frustration was because you went after her. Like, why don't you stand up to him instead of being, hey dad, why are you treating my mom like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you seem to have sided more with your mom, and your frustration was more of like, why are you letting him do this to you? Like, you should do more, and I'm angry at you. But your father kind of just seems like he was in the picture, but he really wasn't really anything towards you.
Yeah.
He was just there.
Yeah. And man, there's so many things that I've questioned about their relationship, because it's like they're roommates, you know, because even moving to this home, they were not sleeping together.
So why were they together?
That's my big question.
So how long?
That's what I was asking her.
So how long did that go on for?
This went on for years. It's still going on.
Oh, they're still together.
They're still together, and they're roommates. They don't sleep together, you know.
And they're not married.
And they're not married.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But he's still the provider for her.
Not now. Before he would pay for everything, like the home. And it's funny because, okay, so moving back to New Jersey, back in our home, you know, we're in this little apartment. So I had stabbed my mom, and this is the first time I cried out to God. I remember going up to my room, closing the door, and being really scared because I'm like, my mom's going to kill me. You know, she's going to kill me. Something bad, terrible is going to happen to me. And so I remember just crying because I felt so bad of what I did, and so much shame. I wanted to die. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be here, you know, because I saw no love in my life, you know, and I was so frustrated because I wanted that. I wanted my parents to love each other and to love me and stick up for me, you know, and so I wasn't getting this. And so I remember just crying out to God in my room and being like, God, whoever you are, just help me. I need you. I need you right now. I need you to change this. I don't want to be here. I remember crying out to God and saying, God, I need your help. I need you to save me. And so I remember having that moment with God, but years.
So I was just going to say, so you said whoever you are. So you knew you knew the idea of a God, but you never had any experience with him. Like, you guys didn't go to church, or you didn't have like a Catholic grandma or anything like that.
No. So my mom was raised Catholic, and so is my dad because they're Mexican, but they never went to church faithfully.
Did they have like the Mary and stuff in their house, that type of stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so you knew the idea, but you never were exposed to it.
Yeah, no, my mom would talk a lot about God, about having faith. She would say, like, I give thanks to God, or that was God. Whenever she would get a job or something, she'd be like, that was God, you know. So she wasn't like ever angry with God or something like that. She did have some sort of reverence and love and respect for God, you know, but she wasn't a Christian. She wasn't.
You guys never went to church or mass or anything?
Only like if there was a baptism or like
Christmas, Easter.
Yeah, or not Christmas or Easter, just baptisms and communions or stuff like that. Which
okay.
So this moment that you cried out to God, did you feel anything? Did you feel God speak to you, or did you feel anything at all, or what happened after?
I didn't feel anything, but I remember just like begging God to hear me, you know. So, but then after that moment, I ended up in middle school. I remember there was a girl who we were in lunchtime. And we were just like minding our business. We were just talking as friends, like all of us. And then this random girl who we never even spoke to, who was like in our grade, she just drops a Ouija board on the table. And she's like, oh, this is real, you know, like you could talk to whatever. I didn't know what she was talking about, but I'm like, she was saying, like, she was claiming for it to be spiritual and like for it to move and whatnot. I was like, that doesn't do anything. Like, you know, just being like, get away from us, you know, like just rejecting her, like, get away from here. And so I started getting more cold, like as years came by, just getting more angry, getting like just hating people, hating companionship. And so, but I was still curious. I was like, oh, let me see, you know, let me try it out, you know. And so I remember just playing with it and whatnot, and it moving, and then it telling me where like I lived. So I got super freaked out there. And then I just
Would you guys do this at school or at friends' houses?
School.
Oh, okay, at school.
Yeah.
During the lunch hour.
Yeah.
Summoning demons during lunch.
Yeah. Yo, it's so crazy. And so, yeah, I just ripped it, threw it out, ran home, and I started getting sleep paralysis. And I don't know if it was after that incident happened between me and my mom. So, yeah. So after that, I'm getting older. I start getting I start seeing that I have a neighbor who walked the same way going home from school. And she was a little older than me. And we start growing older. We start just hanging out, being friends, being silly. And then end up going to high school, and I keep fighting with I keep giving a hard time to my dad, to my mom. My dad's like, because I would ask after school, I wouldn't go home sometimes. I would go to my cousin's home, and it was not to do anything bad. I really wasn't into like smoking or drinking in middle school or anything.
So you weren't
like
partying or anything?
No, not yet.
So not yet. So at this time, were you still fighting those sexual urges and feelings that you had when you were younger, or is that had already passed?
No, not like sober. When I was sober, there's no way I wanted to do that. I didn't want that in my life, so I didn't do it. But that abuse was still there. That spirit was still there because I didn't have Jesus, you know? So, so no, at that time, at that age, I was still not encountering those things or those feelings or those emotions, in that like, you know, with friendships and stuff like that. I genuinely wanted friends, you know? And so, I remember just starting to go to high school. But before that, my dad, he would want to pick me up after school. And sometimes instead of like going the way he would pick me up, I'll go the other way. And
you were avoiding him.
Yeah. And he would get mad at me, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I would be like, Dad, I'm just going to go to my cousin's house. Like, I'm not doing anything bad. Why can't I just hang out with them? You know, I don't want to be alone. I'm going to go home to y'all, you know. I don't want to go home to you guys. I want to go home to a loving home, you know. So I was giving my dad a hard time, and I would go home. He would hit me, you know, and he would say, you're a bad kid. He would always say that. You're a bad kid. You're a bad kid. And I was like, well, if I'm a bad kid, I'm going to do bad things, you know. And so as I got older, you know, I would see my sisters in high school. I would see my sisters, my brothers party. My family loved to party, loved to drink. And so I started drinking. They would like offer me sometimes alcohol when I was 15, you know, 14. And so I would drink. And when I was in high school, I started skipping class to go to my sister's basement to go drink. So I would break into my sister's house and drink. And then I would invite all my friends to skip with me and be like, let's go party, let's go drink at my sister's house. And then I started working for my neighbor illegally in his store. And I remember he was like, how do you want me to pay you? Do you want cash? What do you want? And I'm like, give me your hookahs. Because he was Arab. Yeah. And they would smoke, and that's totally normal in their tradition.
Yes.
And you're 14, you're smoking. That's fine, you know?
Yes.
So I was like, give me the hookahs, give me tobacco, give me the mango tobacco. So I started smoking. I gave my sisters hookahs, and so I would go home I would go to my sister's house, set up all the hookahs, and have everyone smoke. And I taught so many people how to smoke in my high school because my parents moved into a place where the owners were Muslim, and so they smoked, and that's deeply in their culture. So I started learning the things they did in their culture. And excuse me, sorry.
No.
And so I started doing that a lot, just skipping class. And it was honestly to numb the pain, numb everything. Just, I just wanted to escape. I remember waking up because I have to go to school, but not wanting to be there. And I couldn't function. I couldn't function in high school. I couldn't function with everything that has happened in my life. You know, I just couldn't. And there was no one really to ask me, hey, are you okay? You know? And so as I got older, I remember telling one of my sisters, hey, sis, I don't feel good. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be with my parents. And she would be like, you're just hormonal. Like, don't worry about it. Just go to sleep. You know,
sleep it off.
You know, like go to sleep, you know. And I was like, no, like I can't, you know, I don't want to, like I can't function.
Were you feeling suicidal?
No, I was never like, I'm going to kill myself, but I just had this deep anguish and unrest in me, you know, and not wanting to be sober. And when I started to drink, when I started to smoke, that's when I started partaking in kissing other girls and homosexual tendencies. And that made me feel worse. It made me feel more dirty.
Yes.
And it made me feel like I felt as a child, you know? And so, yeah.
Did you ever get like blackout drunk, or you were always? Yeah.
And that was always the goal, you know? That was always, yeah.
Just drink till you black out.
Yeah.
And I know you had at the beginning mentioned your older brother, that you were seeking, protection even from him in a relationship with him. Are you close with your older brother?
Yes, but I guess like what I meant by that is I just wanted him close.
Oh,
I didn't want him to be God.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So in these moments of drinking and blacking out, obviously, you know, you hear stories all the time of girls getting taken advantage of, especially high school girls that black out. Did that situation ever happen with you?
No.
No?
Thankfully, no. Okay. And I'm grateful for that. Yeah. But there was definitely times where I just felt lost. You know, I felt lost. I felt confused. And when I spoke to my sister and I told her, hey, I need help, and she kind of was like hesitant and just kind of didn't understand, that's when I called my other sister. And this sister's from my dad's side of the family. And I never spoke to her. I wasn't really that close to her. She lived in a different state. And so I remember calling her and being like, hey, Marisol, I need your help. Like, I don't feel good. I have these thoughts. I'm struggling. You know, I need help. You know, I want to run away from home. Like, I just don't want to be here. I feel empty inside. I feel lost. And so she was like, don't run away from home. Like, stay there. I'm going to go get you, and then you could come to my home and just we'll take it from there, you know. So I ended up going to her house, and she starts talking to me about Jesus. But before, my friend, her name was Clara, she had liked this guy in high school, and he was a Christian. So she started going to church with him, and they would talk to me about Jesus all the time, and I'd be like, I don't want your Jesus. I want to drink. I want to smoke. You know, like, leave me alone. Don't talk to me about the gospel. I'm not going to stop, you know. And they were like, Ivette, you don't understand. Like, you know, you're lost, and, you know, and.
So at this point, when they're telling you that night that you had cried out to God, you forgot about that, and you were like,
yeah,
you didn't make the connection.
No, I was like, no, I'm drinking. Like, I don't want your religion. I don't want your Jesus. And this happened in a bunch of occasions before, where I would have Christians tell me, like, you're not supposed to pray to Mary. You're not supposed to do this. And I was very confused. I was like, what? Like, the Bible says that? Really? But I never picked up a Bible. I don't know what the Bible says, you know? And so, yes. But when my sister started telling me, my heart has softened. And I started to receive the gospel. And she started opening the Bible to me and started to pour the scriptures to me. And I remember like seeing the words of God, and just being like, wow, God said that? Like, God said, if you lie, you're going to go to hell? What? I'm really going to go to hell, you know? Like, yeah. I deserve hell. And so I was scared, honestly. I was like, man, what do I do? And so my sister had shared to me, Jesus did it on the cross. He took your sin, and you don't have to earn yourself to heaven. Jesus is the answer. And I was like, wow, Jesus did that for me. He really, like, took my sin. He became sin. And she's like, yeah, he died for you. This is the answer to salvation. I was like, wow, it's so simple, and it's so amazing, you know? So my heart started softening. I started receiving the word of God. And so she took me to church, and she tells me to this day that there was an altar call, but I don't remember an altar call, and I was pretty young. I didn't understand a lot of the words they were saying, you know? Mm-hmm.
The lingo, yeah.
Yeah, so it was all pretty new to me. And towards the end of the service, when it all finished, my sister asked me, Yvette, do you want to give your life to Jesus? And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, of course, why wouldn't I want to give my life to Jesus? You know, he knows he knows me more than anything, you know? Because before, in high school, I remember waking up and not having any desire to do anything in life. I had no purpose. I felt like I just didn't want to be alive. You know, I was just dead. And when I gave my life to Jesus, she said, okay, I'm going to tell pastor that you want to give your life to Jesus. And so the pastor comes, she tells him, my sister wants to give her life to Jesus. He's like, oh, good. You know, I'll lead you into a sinner's prayer. And so as he's praying, he's telling me to repeat the words. And so I start repeating the words. And when I start repeating the words, I start crying. And I didn't know why I was crying. I was like, why am I crying? Like, I don't even know why I'm crying. But I'm there just crying. And I remember after that, a lady in the church saying, your life's going to change forever. You have no idea what you just did, you know? And so I was like, okay. And then people were saying stuff like, God's going to change you. God's going to change your life. And I was like, okay, God, good luck. Because
I got to go back.
Good luck, because I felt like I was a mess inside, you know. And I remember going back to my house, and my friends, like, there's a party. There's going to be hookah. There's going to be alcohol. And I'm like, oh, man, like, do I go? I don't want to go. I just gave my life to Jesus. I don't want to go. But it's crazy, because before that, I would have said, yes, heck yeah, I'm going to go.
You wouldn't have hesitated.
Yeah, but this time I was like, I don't want to go. I started not having that desire anymore. And so,
and this was at 15, correct?
Yeah, like around that age. Yeah. So, but after she told me like, hey, there's this party. So I was like, okay, I'll go, but I'm not going to drink. I told her, I'm not going to drink. I don't want to get drunk. So she said, okay, I'll just watch you. That's the friend that Glad was talking about. They were together and they're crazy. and so people would know it's because I would always invite people to go out, so everyone already knew like, hey, Yvette's, she's down to like just do whatever. And so I would just go and everyone knew me as that, like, so I had this reputation of just being this party, girl. And so I get invited and I'm there and I'm like, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. Like the voice of God is like, what are you doing here?
Felt conviction for the first
yes,
time.
like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be home reading your word. And so I'm there and they're like, do you want to drink? I'm like, no, I'll just smoke. I'll just smoke. So I'm smoking. And then after that, I was like, I'm never coming back. I'm never coming back again. And so I told my friend.
Did you see the party differently?
Yes, it was not fun.
Okay.
It was not fun.
Yeah, I was like, was it fun anymore? Or was it just like, oh my gosh, no.
No, because it was empty from the beginning. I was there to find something and it was never there.
Yeah.
So it started hitting me like there's nothing here.
Good.
And I lost all my friends that, partied with me and all of these things. And so I try to look for a church nearby, and my friend Clara and her boyfriend are going to that church that they always were trying to invite me to. So I joined that church, which is IMOP.
Were they still going themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they were dating and they were going themselves. And so I started joining and started worshiping God, started going into cell group, which is like Bible study for them. And I just felt alive. Like I just felt water. I felt like, man, the love of God is here. I felt
the love that you were missing.
Yes. And so, and my mom started going and I saw her, like she was so supportive when I went because I know I had, I put her through so much, just stuff and I did stuff to her that was messed up. And so, I'm very happy that she was able to go and support me. And we started going together on Sundays and we're there receiving. And I'm seeing her answer altar call and her get delivered.
Amen.
Like her just... like I would see her just crying in the altar, just crying because she's been through her own stuff. She has her own testimony. She's the way that she is because of whatever happened to her when she was little, and so
it was through her seeing a change in you.
Yeah.
Where she's like, wow, I got to check this out and support her and see what it's all about.
Yeah. And she started seeing me read the word and she's like, wow, my daughter, she's reading the Bible, like what? This is unheard of. And so I go to, and then the problems start rising up, and I go to my family's gatherings and they're like, oh, so we hear you're Christian.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, how was, because your mom was Catholic, so how was that? Yeah.
So funny story, my sister, one of them, she was actually a leader of the Virgin Mary. Like they do these things called rosarios. Mm-hmm. So they take Virgin Mary house to house and they'll do like their ceremony for the idols.
Yes, yeah.
And so she was the leader doing that. And so was her aunt, but not from my mom's side, from her dad's side. Because we have different parents.
Yeah.
And so there was this deep resistance in family gatherings. I would be like, that's idolatry. We don't do that. Like they would tell me like, whoa, what do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? And I'm like, no, I don't believe in that. I believe in the word of God. I believe in Jesus. The Bible says you shall not have any idols. You shall not do this. You shall not, do all of these things that you guys are doing, And they got deeply offended and they kicked me out of they kicked me out of Thanksgiving, like halfway. They kicked me out. I got choked one time. Yeah, I got choked one time, and I was like, you know what? I didn't fight back, y'all, because I knew I deserved it. Like, I knew, not that I deserved it, but I knew, like, they saw me in my rebellion. I understand, so I didn't fight. And I try not to have my heart hardened towards them,
Yes.
and just have mercy and grace and understand that there's power in the gospel and that it's going to be offensive, and so.
So during all this, real quick, with your family kind of turning their back on you, your friends, you lost all your friends. Was that tough for you to make those stands? Like, did you ever feel like, I want to kind of just go back, or there was a complete change and you're just like, well, I don't care?
No, because I had no problems making a stand for Jesus because I was so filled with his love, his fire, his joy that I didn't care if I offended you. This is the truth, and so I didn't care who you were. I'm going to talk to you about Jesus and what Jesus did in my life, and I started receiving healing because pastor would talk about things like, not having the love of your parents and seeing abuse and all of these things. I'm like, man, this is me. Yeah, this is answering all of these things. Like, wow, God does love me. God is here. I'm not alone. I'm not abandoned. And once I gave my life to Jesus, I stopped having sleep paralysis. So I saw a breakthrough. I saw the power of God flowing through me, so I couldn't deny it, and I couldn't not talk about Jesus. So I was one of those that I don't care who you are, I'm going to talk to you about God, and I don't care. So that was me in those moments, and I was fairly young. I still had a lot of anger issues. And
what did your dad think through all this? Especially seeing your mom go to church with you and all that stuff. He
hated it. He would, so my sister would try to talk to my dad about Jesus, and he would kick them out. He would kick her out of the house. He would kick her out, like, don't talk to me about your Jesus. And my dad, during that time, started cheating on my mom openly, like, started talking to women in front of her, like, oh, mi amor, like, over the phone to other girls.
Oh, my goodness.
And so my brother and myself and my mom, we were angry. We were like, dude, you have no respect. You have no respect. Like, she might not be your wife, but she's our mom, and you have no respect towards her. So all of us together, we kind of kicked him out the house, like, get out, and he was cheating, and maybe when we were younger, you got away with a lot of the stuff that you got away with, but you're not going to get away with all these things, because he was cheating on my mom when I was a little girl. My mom started telling me, like, as I got older, your dad was cheating on me.
Yeah.
And so we started, to say that, like, Dad, who are you talking to? Like, my brother started hearing him, like, talk to other women and all these things. So kicked him out of the house, told him, Dad, you need to leave. Like, and my mom and my dad started getting into arguments again. And during all this time of us giving our lives to Jesus, starting to have relationships. So Dad's not in the house. He's not in the picture anymore. It's just me, my mom, my dad, my brother.
Did your brother go to church with you guys?
So in the beginning, he did. He actually came to Christ before I did.
Oh.
So that friend was my friend that invited me to church, her boyfriend was my brother's friend. Oh, but they had an acquaintance. So my brother had one friend in the church, and he would invite him there
as well.
To go. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So there was another guy. There was two guys from our school that would go to church. And so my brother would go, and in the beginning, but then he backslid. Okay. And he went full on, like, just sin, Yeah. So at first he did, but then once my dad was gone, he stopped going. He stopped going to church. But I kept going. Me and my mom kept going. And I was madly in love with Jesus in high school, and I would just talk to people about God. I'll make friends. I'll make more Christian friends.
So then let's go back to what Glad was talking about when you started talking to him and sliding in his DMs. it was more of just you're just being friendly.
No, so I actually did care about school, and I knew that Glad was Asian and Filipino.
He was smart.
And he was smart. So when I would slide into his DM and I dare him to pull up the DMs, it's literally, hey, do you have the homework? And he would be like, no. And I'm like, dude, what kind of nerd doesn't have the homework? So I would just like be like, bye. I didn't find Glad attractive at all in
high school.
Yeah, high school. I thought he looked like a boy, and I just didn't like him,
Ouch.
I'm sorry.
She used you. She used you for homework. She used you. He must be a nerd. Give me the homework, dude.
Yeah, I was like, what kind of nerd doesn't have the homework?
And I can see Glad all quiet, all what? Like
That's funny. Okay, so then you go into a bad 4-year relationship. Was that started in high school or right after high school?
So it was still in high school. I was underage. I was 16, and this guy,
So was he older?
Yeah, he was older.
How much older?
Way older.
Like how much older?
He's 21. I was 16.
Okay. I thought you were going to say like 40 or something.
I mean, back in the day it was normal, but it's not normal,
Okay.
But
Where'd you meet this guy?
my nephew, it was his friend, and one time we were all hanging out, and he was like trying to be slick. He's like, so what music do you listen to? And this was when I came to Christ, and I was like, he's trying to start a conversation with me, and during the time I didn't want to talk to him. I was madly in love with Jesus. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I had no interest in anything. Just God. And I'm like, he's like, you listen to salsa? You listen to what, this, that? I'm like, no. I was like, no, I don't listen to none of that. And he's like, so what do you listen to? And I'm like, I listen to worship music. I love God. I love Jesus. I go to Christian church. He's like, oh yeah? I've been to church. He's like, I know certain, bands, Christian bands. And I was like, oh yeah? Like, I was like, oh wow, you do? I was very naive. And he starts telling me like he's a Christian. He starts telling me he's a Christian. He's this and that. And
he's feeding you all the lines and he duped you into a relationship? Or
yeah. What? Well, definitely I was not interested in the beginning, but then after him talking to me, I was like, oh, wow, this guy loves God. Like, and he has a car and, and all these things. And so we started talking, and he starts picking me after school from the high school, starts picking me up, taking me places, but I'm like, I'm going to church. Like, I go to church. Like, you say you go to church, so you must come to my church, if that's what you're all about. And so he's like, oh, okay, like, I'll go, I know Jesus, and he starts telling me, like, he knew his Bible. So apparently he starts telling me that his dad was sick, and they're very poor, and there's people in the church that help them. And so his mom will go to church and take the kids, and they kind of grew up sort of in church, and they knew of the Bible, and they knew all this. So for a very long time, I fell into that. Like, oh, there must be hope there, he probably loves God, But then he was only interested in one thing, he trapped me, and I fell into that. And so, and he would lie to me. Like, he would be like, oh, I'm a virgin, I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah, he manipulated you.
Yeah.
He took advantage of you.
Mm-hmm. And I could see that he was trying to take me away from church, take me away from God, and started telling me, like, God's not real. If God was real, why don't he heal my dad? And I'm like, whoa, I thought you loved Jesus. I thought you believed in God. I thought you didn't deny, Jesus. And so, as time went on, I started, like, in the beginning, I was like, you fall for it. The guy, he's giving you attention. Your dad's not home. That's that, that love that you kind of want. And then the Jesus out this, this facade, and I fell into that. But then I want to be in church. This guy's not there. I don't have to be in this relationship. I remember someone in my family telling me, how long have y'all been together? I'm like, it's been like 4 years. She said, you're not going to get married? I'm like, heck no, I'm not going to get married with him. So I was like, oh, man, what am I doing? And
so how did it go on for 4 years?
I got used to the companionship. He was there all the time with my family because of my cousin, because of my nephew. They're friends, best friends. And the family knew him.
Did you see any correlation between you and him and being comfortable with him and you and your mom and your dad? Where she was comfortable and, okay, I'll put up with whatever.
Yes. And I started doing that, just like, oh, he's just there, But then a sister in the Lord, thank the Lord for sisters in the Lord who tell the truth. She comes up to me and it's like, she tells me straightforward, Juanita. I'm going to say her name. She comes up, she tells me, Ivette, he does not love God. He doesn't love you. Leave him. You're wasting your time. Very lovingly told me that. And I was like, okay, but how do I do this in my mind? How do I get rid of this guy? So in the beginning, I would kind of like hint it to him, like, hey, I don't want to be, like, I don't want to, but he would kind of just still be there. So, so one time we're in a family gathering, in his family gathering. So I'm like, man, how do I get, like, what do I do? What do I do to start something so he doesn't see me the same? So he just, just hates me. So he doesn't, call me back, text me back. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And so, my nephew sent him like a picture of a girl who's kind of like half dressed, half not, So at the time I didn't care. Like I really didn't care because I knew my nephew was just sending it to him, and the guys are just dumb, And so, but I made it a big deal. I was like, what are you doing? And so I start swinging at him in front of his family. Like, you see this little girl and there's this big guy, and I'm just swinging, and I'm like, just, I don't like you, I hate you. My nephew's all like, Ivette, chill. Everyone's like, chill. And so I could see him like getting angry. So I go more, like I just start punching even more, like, I hate you. And then he gets really, really mad because, his family's there.
Yeah,
and like,
you're embarrassing him. Yeah.
Yes, like, because I'm causing a scene and I look terrible, and, which I didn't care because I didn't care for him. I didn't care about the relationship. And so I was like, okay, and I could tell, like, he didn't want to talk to me after that. So I was like, okay, that worked,
That worked.
But then he starts calling me, he starts texting me again, like, I want you, like, girl, But I didn't want to be in a relationship.
Yeah, you were done.
So during these 4 years, did your relationship with God suffer? Like, was you
absolutely
less going to church and less kind of?
I wasn't less going to church. I was still going to church, but I felt dirty. I felt like, man, I'm wasting my time, and I feel like a pig, just dirty. Because I know that I shouldn't be with this person.
Were you physically? Did he get what he wanted?
Yeah.
So with you sleeping with him, did you have conviction of fornication?
Yes. And I did. And once I realized that he was just interested in that, because that was his goal. That's the worldly guy's goal, is to just get one thing and that's it. You know, it's not to love you, marry you. That's all just a lie. You know, like, I love you, I'm going to marry you. I'm going to get, and that's what he was telling me. Like, I want to marry you. I want to do. And once I realized that that's not true, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, am I still going to believe in this? Am I still going to believe in his lies and his flattery? So that's when, like, I kind of got tired and I was like, God, like, I need you to help me, you know? And so.
So did you resist him trying to get back with you?
Yeah.
You shut him down?
Yeah. So after that, I was like, you know, I was trying to get over that relationship because he was still kind of calling me and everything, but I would ignore it. I started blocking him. I blocked him and everything, like, didn't want to be in contact with him. And so I started, I was like, I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know how to move on, you know? And so I was like, let me talk to other people. Maybe I just need to talk to other people, you know, to forget, to get over it. And so that's when I started talking to Glad. And I was like, God's supposedly a Christian, you know. let me talk to him, you know. And we have a friend who had posted him. I don't know if I want to say his name. But I was like, I remember telling my mom, there's this guy, he's in the Air Force, and I don't know if he has family. He went to boot camp. He came back in town. Should we invite him to the lake? Like, what do you think? You know, my mom's like, sí, invítalo. You know, invite him. So because my brother's in the army, and my brother, he would stay in McGuire, and that's where he was at certain times. And sometimes I would post that I would be there, and when I would be there, Glad would be like, you're here, come through, girl, come through. And I was like, I ain't gonna come through, you know. So I knew he was military. I knew he was, you know, in training and In the beginning, I was not like interested at all. But then after that relationship, and I just want to get over everything, want to get over the past, I was like, let me try to talk to someone else. In the beginning, I didn't want nothing serious. I just wanted a guy to talk to, kind of just get over it. So I started talking to Glad, and I knew that my ex was like, he would drive through my neighborhood.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, he would drive through my neighborhood, and we would see his car, you know. He would talk to my brother sometimes as well. And he'd be like, how's Ivette, you know, how she's doing, you know, and like, and all of these things. And
I love that you do the voice, by the way. I love it. I love that you do the voice.
And so I'm talking to Glad now. And so as we're hanging out, as I invite him to so in high school, Glad was very different. He was very quiet, very like just to himself. He wasn't really vocal about Jesus, and that's something that I knew about him, and I didn't like that, you know, because I wanted someone who loved God, who really, really wanted to make a stand for Jesus, you know, and his power and his, you know, his glory and everything. And so, after that happened, after that relationship, I was like, man, I really need to get over this. I need to just move on. So I started talking to Glad, and he's all like, I invite him over, and then my niece, when I see him coming out the house, he's all muscle because he was in boot camp and he's working out.
Now you found him attractive?
Yeah, I was like, dang, Glad changed. He's not a boy, he's a man. You know, the military did something to him.
They made a man out of him.
Yeah.
That's why she's on the canoe and she's all, so let's play a game.
Yeah. And my brother's in the army, and I looked up to him, and he's a ranger, and he, you know, he works hard. He's, you know, providing, and, you know, I've seen my brother Alex, shout out to Alex. He's a man, and he loves me, and, you know, and so I longed for that. And so I started seeing that in Glad. I'm like, wow, you know, Glad's, you know, he's, you know, military, and so my brother's military. I'm familiar to all of that.
Yes.
And so I love that about him. And so he's in the lake, and he's not there. And me and my niece, we're in the same grade, and we both knew Glad in high school. She looks at me, she's like, dang, Glad changed. He looked good. And when she said, I was like, girl, I don't buy him. So I had to make it obvious, like, girl, you know, you.
Dibs, I got dibs.
Yeah, because, you know, it be crazy now in these generations. You got to claim your fish, you know? So I felt like God put me in a sticky situation, you know? And so that's the backstory, y'all. So, you know, you gotta make yourself clear sometimes. But anyways.
Oh, you're so funny.
And so Glad and I were hanging out. He's coming to my house. You know, my dad's not home. It's super easy. You know, my dad's not home to be like, you know, I don't have no Christian dad. And my dad's not home to be like, hey, who's this guy? Mm-hmm. You know, who the hell, you know? And so... So you know, he has access to that. My mom, she could only do so much. You know, I love you, moms, but moms can only do so much. You know,
you're gonna find a way. You're gonna find a way.
Yeah, and so you know, and when I'm hanging out with Glad, I remember one time we're hanging out, but even before that, I would get weird numbers calling me. And like Georgia, Louisiana, Wyoming. And I'm like, who the heck is calling me in all these numbers? And I had a feeling it was my ex. And they kept calling me. And one time me and Glad are together. I'm like, I pick up. I'm like, yeah, you know? And it's my ex. He's like, he's just cursing me out. And I'm telling him, like, leave me alone. Like, I moved on. Like, why can't you just leave me alone? And so... I didn't want to waste my time, so I told Glad, you talk to him. So Glad's talking to him over the phone, and he's telling him, hey, she's not interested. Like, you got to let it go.
Were you guys together, or no? You guys were just talking?
We were, I'm not sure. We were starting to talk and, like, hang out, like, but we weren't official. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't official. And so yeah, and so... in the beginning, after that first day in Hoboken, where, you know, all the people, you know, take all the girls, and I knew what was happening. And I'm like, man, this guy is like I could tell Glad's like trying to push himself too much, you know? And I'm trying to like, hey, like, you know, like I am not here for that, you know? And so to all the girls, like, don't do that, you know, like, don't be in a place where you're not supposed to be in. And sometimes we put ourselves in those situations, and I shouldn't have, you know. And so, you know, I know
he said that you kind of like sighed. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
I don't
moment?
remember that, but I do remember being like, man, you know, like, what am I doing here? I'm never coming back. And I remember after that, I remember telling God, like, no, God, this is not for me. Like, I don't want to talk to him. I don't like this. I don't want to be in this situation. I don't want to be, you know, in this. And so I stopped talking to him, and we kind of just stopped talking. And then later on, one day he was like, hey, like, you want to hang out? You want some Jamba Juice? Have you had Jamba Juice? And I didn't, you know, and I was like, and dumb me, I'm like, okay, you know. But this time I'm like, I'm going to bring my friend, you know, so I'm not alone with him. So I bring my friend, the one who's in our marriage certificate. So it's crazy. Life is crazy. But so she comes with me, you know, because I didn't want him to feel like it's just going to be easy here. You know, it's not like, this is not what it's about, you know, like I don't want him to have ill thoughts towards me and intentions, you know, or have easy access, you know. And so it's double standards for guys and girls, you know, to really make that, you know, like, hey, boundaries, you know. And so this is why I love the fellowship, because I was like, man, if Glad and I were in this fellowship, life would have been a lot easier, you know. And so we started dating, and I started going to his church. He starts coming to my church. And, you know, I go to his church. I start meeting his pastor, his family, and vice versa. And it's good, you know. And but we did end up falling under, fornication after. For a really long time, we didn't, like, when we were trying to talk. But once he was like, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend? I was like, wow, he's being kind, he's not pursuing me like that. He does love me, he does care for me. So I was very naive, and so we kind of just fornicated and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
One thing led to another. Yeah.
So you compromised. So did you feel bad after it? I asked Glad.
I think that Glad felt more bad than I did, honestly, because I would see him afterwards pray, get on his knees and start praying. Like, he would be on the side of my bedroom just, Lord God, forgive me of my sin. Lord, please forgive me. I don't want to do this. And all of these things. And I'm like, what is he doing? Like, this is not Christianity. Like, what is, like, and I would look at him and I would tell him, what are you doing? He's like, my mom always told me you never know when Jesus is going to come back. Like, you got to be ready. Like, you got to repent. I was like,
so he did that so he would do this.
He would
every time.
No, he would just randomly do it. And so yeah, and then I remember after that whole thing, we started. So we fornicated. And I would feel bad in church, but there was never really like any standards, They would preach on sin and fornication, and like Glad said, like, we choose to sin. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of it's on us, lack of discipline, lack of, trust in the Lord, lack of waiting on God, And so I got pregnant, and I remember getting pregnant, just starting to feel sick, starting to get nauseous and throwing up.
So what was your first initial thought when you found out you were pregnant?
Did
your heart sink? Or were you just like, oh my God?
Yeah, I was so terrified because Glad would talk to me about marriage when we were dating. He would be like, hey, I want to get married. I want to get married with you, and all these things. And I'd be like, what do you mean you want to get married? I'm 19. I don't know what I want to do with my life, And so, so I could see him longing for marriage, but I was freaked out because I didn't see a good, healthy marriage in my life. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I didn't see a loving father figure. I didn't see a love, a love dynamic in my home, and I didn't want that. I thought as marriage as something horrible, and like I don't need that.
Yeah, it's miserable. So you're like, I don't want to be miserable.
Yeah. And so,
but yet you were doing the same thing your mom did. You weren't getting married, but you were in these relationships.
Yeah,
with no commitment.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
And so then, after that, I got pregnant, and I was like, I'm not getting married. And I started feeling really bad as a disciple towards my leaders. I was like, these people have invested so much time in me, so much effort, and I felt so guilty as being a disciple and getting pregnant and my sin coming to my face, and I didn't wanna feel like I let them down or them feel a certain way towards me, like, man, like, Mm-hmm. So I remember telling Glad, like, I'm not going to have this baby. I'm aborting this child. And so I remember calling different places and setting up for an abortion.
So you saying that kind of sounds like you didn't have any hesitation. Like, it was just like, no, I want to abort this baby. Like, mm-hmm. Did you not have any morals or anything of you're going to kill your own child? You're just like, no, I'm just going to abort it.
Not in that moment, because all I could see for this person is pain in life, and suffering and me just being selfish. Mm-hmm. I don't want to step up. I don't want to do, taking that motherly role or being under this guy who I don't even know that well. I just met him, not too long ago,
So if you would have went through with it, do you think you could have? Like, do you think if you went into the doctor's office, and do you think you would have been able to, or do you think something would have stopped you from doing it?
I don't know. And so I remember one night, I don't know if it was the night before the abortion or something like that, but I was hearing a voice saying, kill it. I turned off the lights, getting ready to go to bed, and I hear a voice in my room saying, kill it, kill it, kill it. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I'm like, who is saying that? That's
It's
not
that
me.
demon that you summoned with the Ouija board.
And so when I hear that, I sit up on the side of my bed, and this voice comes out of me, and it says, devil, get away from me. I'm not gonna kill this child. I'm gonna have this child. And when I said that, I was like, did I just say that? And I started crying, and I felt so bad. And I started telling God, I'm so sorry, God, for even thinking about that, for even the thought of killing this child. And I started begging God, like, God, give me love for this child. Give me love for this person. Help me, God. And so I remember just crying there. And then I don't know if it was that day or the next day. And I just told God, like, I don't care. I don't care what you say. I'm going to have this child. I'm going to keep this child. I'm not going to kill this person, And so God's like, well, we should go to the leaders and tell them, tell them what's going on, that you're pregnant, And so we're terrified. We're like, man, they're going to kick us out of this church, They're going to be like, you fake Christians or something, because I knew better.
Yes.
And I felt awful of everything. And so I remember sitting before them, and then Glad's just like, she's pregnant. Yvette's pregnant. And she's like, congratulations, Yvette, you're pregnant. She hugged me. And I was super weirded out. I'm like, why is she hugging me? Why is she telling me congratulations? Why isn't she shaming me? Why isn't she telling me I'm a bad person, And I don't know. Maybe she's seen things happen in the church. I don't know. People leave the church and because of dumb things. And so Glad's like, we need to get married. They're like, oh, you guys need to get married. So I'm like, what? I'm going to get married? Like, I need to get married with this guy? And so Glad's really like, we got to get married. We got to get married. And my leaders are like, you guys got to get married. And so.
And in your mind, you're like, I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm 19. What am I going to do? Like, I'm married. And so that night or a few nights later, because I'm giving Glad trouble, like I'm really resisting marriage because we've had conversations of submission and what the Bible says. And I'm like, God, I love you, but I don't know about submission. I don't know what you're talking about, Jesus, about some wives need to submit under men. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen a good man in my life. and that's just the honest truth. To me, they're just abusive and good for nothing cheaters.
Yeah.
So I'm like, God, you got to prove me. You got to show me. So I told God, I was like, God, if God's the person that you want me to marry, I need you to show me and tell me. I'm not going to marry him unless you tell me. Mm-hmm. So that night, I have a dream. And in this dream, Glad's decorating these 2 trees with bows, and he's telling all these girls, decorate the tree. She's coming. She's coming. And then they see me, and they're like, she's here. So Glad gets on one knee, and he has a ring. And I'm just like, he's telling me to be his wife. I'm all ecstatic in my dream, like all happy. And he just puts the ring in my finger, and I'm like, wow. And I wake up, and I'm like, wow, God, you're crazy, God. You know? And I was like, wow, God really answered. He really answered. And we got married.
It's interesting that that both you and Glad had very vivid, distinct dreams about certain situations and decisions you had to make in your life.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So at this point, you go through with it, you get married. Marriage starts off rocky and isn't what you hoped it would be. So going through all the stuff that you went through with Glad, did you have moments of regret or in your head going like, man, I knew it. This dude's just another loser like I thought everybody else was, like every other man?
Well, one thing that happened very, very early on before we got married, I believe. I remember we took a trip to Mexico, and we're sitting in the sand, and this was before Hosea would come. And I think this was, I don't know, we had the marriage certificate. I don't know if we were already married, but very, very early on when I was pregnant, he's like, I need to tell you something. I need to talk to you about certain things. So I was like, okay. And I'm very concerned because of the way he told me. I'm like, man, what's he going to tell me, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're in the sand, and he starts confessing to me things like his trip. You know?
This is what he told you?
Yeah, he's telling me about his trip and the issues he struggles with. And I get my stomach sinks, and I'm pregnant, and I felt something in me like, oh, dang, you know, like I'm gonna have to like put up with this, you know, I'm gonna have to just be aware of this, you know, and look out for this. And so yeah, I you know, there was a lot of things that weren't said to me, but I know that there were things that were said to me that at least it gave me a heads up, you know, to what's to come, because now I know some of the issues. And so I remember once we got married, we got settled into our apartment, and Glad had a lot of anger issues that I could see, where he would just scream and lash out. And in the beginning, it was very like, I didn't know how to react to it. So I would just go run inside the bathroom and just cry because I didn't know how to handle it. But I started kind of like retaliating. You know, I started fighting back, scream back at him. And it was scary. It was always scary confessing or sharing to people these things. For whatever reason, I just didn't feel like I could, or I was.
To him things, or to people in general that, hey, me and Glad are going through problems?
Yeah, that, like
us
going through things and things of that nature, and getting that type of counsel. We were getting counsel in the beginning of our marriage, and that was helpful with the youth leaders. We would tell them, hey, we were fighting, you know. I would call the youth pastor, hey, she's acting crazy, just come save me. So, you know, we did have a lot of those, but I think that, I don't know, I don't know if it was because we're young and we're learning, I don't know, but it was very hard trying to, like, I think with the issues that he had, his addiction to pornography really brought a lot of destruction to the marriage, because of the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, the unforgiveness, the selfishness, you know, it just all piles up together. And so there's like this all these problems.
Well, there's also the unwantedness, right? Like the unloved, like, why am I not good enough for you? Like that starts to bring up issues as well. You know what I mean?
And then it's this vicious cycle because now you're mad and and then now he goes back to this, and then you're like, well, now you're hurt again, and now you're mad, and then you know what I mean? It's just like this vicious cycle.
Because he, as he mentioned, he would do it out of spite almost. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are arguing. He's like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll do this.
And he would confess to me like, hey, I did this and I did that, you know, and even when we wouldn't, you know, argue or stuff. And so it was, I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't know whether to tell him get help, or I also didn't want to kind of expose him like that, you know, or say stuff about him, you know, like I don't know how to go about this stuff, you know. But we did ended up getting counsel, and I felt that if he had issues, he should say them, you know. But for me, like, I gotta say what I'm going through. But in the moment of us getting counsel, we're more fighting of who's right. You know, we're still in that phase of I'm right, and he's like I'm right. So you're not getting nowhere. Yeah. Because both of y'all think you're right. So, you know, and I was, for many years, that's the problem. And you can't move forward when you think you're right. You know, so that's a lot.
Well, one of the things that Pastor Luis always mentions is during counseling sessions, especially with couples, is they're hindered because they don't put everything out on the table. They're holding back. They're not saying everything. So, you know, when trying to get counseling with only hearing, you know, bits and pieces of what's really happening,
right,
you're never going to see progress. You know what I mean? So just a lesson for anybody, you know, going through counseling and stuff like that. Like, it all has to come out on the table.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, from the wives, the husbands, because once you hold things back, then you're never going to see any development of progress. You know what I mean? So, okay, so so then do we get to the divorce papers? Do you have anything else you want to talk before that? Because when he served the divorce papers, he said you kind of seemed a little stunned, like, what the heck is this? Like, yeah. So at that point, did you think your marriage was okay? Like, did it come out of nowhere?
So for a very long time, I feel like I wanted to deal with my issues in my marriage. So I knew, like, he had his issues, I had my issues. And I was tired of pointing the finger at him and saying, you know, I'm the problem too, you know. And so I tried getting help. I remember going to like a AA, Christian AA. I don't know if you guys know Celebrate Recovery. So I ended up doing the 12 steps, trying to get counsel, you know, starting to share the things that happened to me when I was younger, the abuse,
Did you know about his abuse?
No.
Did he know about yours?
Yes and no. So he knew about my abuse, but he didn't know that I had homosexual tendencies.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't know about the homosexuality until like 3 years in the marriage. And that was like really what my anger came from. So, a lot of my anger actually came from that, because going to the 12 steps, the AA, the Christians, the Christian AA, I went there, and I went mainly for my anger because one of us has to be patient. You know, we can't kill each other, you know? And so I was like, God, I don't know what to do, Jesus. You know, I was so frustrated, so desperate. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I had to repent. And I told God, I'm sorry for the things that I've done in my marriage, for the things that I brought into my marriage. And so I tried to get help and get counsel with pastors, with all these things. And, you know, in the beginning it was helping. And I remember there was a moment where I was like, God, why am I so angry? Why am I so angry? And God's like, because you don't trust me. Why don't I trust you? He's like, because of what happened to you when you were young. You know, you don't trust me. You don't trust your husband. You don't want to submit under him. You know, you're not submitting. You're not submitting to your husband because you're not submitting to me. And I was like, wow, okay. And I felt delivered in that moment. Like, wow, God, okay. And him healing my heart and touching me. And I was more patient and more loving towards him. But then there was a moment where I knew that there's certain things that would get like really ticked off. That it would just, it would not be him. It was just not my husband anymore. And I think that's why a lot of the times I gave him mercy and grace, because when I looked at him, I knew that was not him. I knew that was not Glad, because I knew like, that doesn't look like my husband. That looks like a demon in him, you know? And so there was, after that, I tried to get help, but we got into that argument where towards the end there in the military, and he's really thinking like, we should stay in California. I don't want to stay in California. I don't want to stay in the military. The only good thing is the financial help and all of these things. But I'm like, we can't serve God, you know, because he's gone. He's deployed. His job. A lot of the fighting as well was because he has 12-hour shifts. We don't see him. Da, 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 da. And so, you know, he comes home to his wife who's tired, who has a baby, has to feed him, has to clean the house, doesn't have family, doesn't have anybody, you know.
Yeah, it's just you two. Yeah.
It's like being sent out without Jesus. You know, you're being sent out and you don't got, you know, and so it was very difficult, and I try to surround myself with a lot of Christian military families. And they were very understanding. You know, the military has a reputation for having a lot of marital problems, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of physical abuse. It's not uncommon. It's not like it's not there. Like they know, and they're like, Yvette, you guys, I think a lot of people treat it as you guys are just a military family who's going through it, who's young. And so a lot of it kind of just like was being swept under the rug. It's like, it's not a big deal, but to me it was. To us it is, and to God it is. Yeah. You know, and so.
Well, even Glad saying, oh yeah, they just put me in a hotel room to get me away. Yeah. Like for the weekend, so we're not fighting. Like, yeah, that was their answer.
Yeah. And so, I try to get some help, but I could tell that he still had a lot of resentment towards me, because I don't know if he was holding resentment or bitterness, but in the beginning of our marriage and in between, he would get me really mad, I would throw my hands on him and I would throw him things, and I was abusive to him, you know. And so,
did you ever notice that was another aspect of your mom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it's just my mom's fault. I think.
No, of course not. But yeah. But you know, you growing up with the resentment towards your mom, and I mean, we brought it up with, you know, the relationship aspect of complacency, but as far as the physical aspect of seeing your mom throw things at your dad and all that kind of stuff, like, did you ever see like, man, I'm acting like my mom did? Because obviously, you know, you guys being physical and attacking each other and stuff, like, that's obviously over the line. You guys should talk about these things, not hit each other.
I think what my childhood did is normalize it. Mm-hmm. You know, and so to me, it's like, it's normal. You know,
this is how you're supposed to fight in a
this, you know, I've seen this, so it's normal. I didn't think like, oh, I'm doing what my mom did, but I definitely think like this is normal. Like this, oh, you know, I saw my parents fight. You know, I saw my mom throwing things. You know,
when you get in a fight, you can throw things.
Yeah. And so, which is not good. You know, you shouldn't do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so I don't know if he resented me towards that. I could tell that, you know, I did want to, I wanted to let him know, like, I don't want to do that. I don't, like, knowing God, learning more about him, knowing about Jesus, the gospel, what a loving wife is supposed to be, a respectful wife. Mm-hmm. A wife is not supposed to do that. And so I try to get help. Like, that's my anger, and I can't let my anger control me, because at times it felt like my anger was controlling me. Yeah. My anger was dominating me. And not until I started confessing things and saying things to people, confessing the abuse, confessing certain things, did I progress, you know? And so this time that you guys were separated, when you went back home, back east, after your domestic violence and he got thrown in jail or whatever, Glad had mentioned that you both were kind of focusing on your relationship with God, trying to seek him more and get closer to him. Yeah. Right? So during that time, do you feel that things were broken during that time, or was it still later that things were broken? I think that during that time, I actually, being away from God made me feel like, wow, I do love him. I want to be with him. I do love my life with him. And I think that the devil would lie to me, like, oh, look at you guys, you know. And so I longed for him, you know. So if anything, God showed me that you do want to be with him. Which is what, you know, he kind of just said too. Like, you do want to be with your wife.
So it just opened you guys' eyes to, we need to work this out and make it work.
Yeah. And when we came back together, we had more love for each other, more patience. And I actually started reading my word more, because before I wouldn't read my word as much. I wouldn't pray as much. And this forced me to pray and read my word. Like, because my sister, the one who shared me the gospel, was the one that told me, hey, Ivette, you need to repent. You guys can't be doing this, you know. And I started confessing to her, like, this is the stuff that was going in my marriage. And she was like, oh, okay, like, you know, God definitely doesn't want y'all to get divorced, but if you guys want to work things out, you need to repent. You need to love each other. You need to be patient. And so she really helped me. She would always bring scriptures like repent, you know, and something that, the scripture that came to my mind when I was separated from God was when the Israelites were exiled of the land because of their sin. Mm-hmm. God took them out of Israel because of their sin. And so I felt like, man, God's taking me out because of my sin, because of my rebellion and my anger. And so it's a time to repent. It's a time to really know and live the truth, and live in it and practice it. And so going back, I was like, man, I really got to get help. And so that really pushed me to get help, pushed me to want to live more for God.
And so this time of you guys coming back together and trying to make it really work, is this when you guys laid everything out on the table?
Yeah.
As far as like the stuff that he hadn't told you about, you haven't told him about.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, we started confessing more things. He didn't really start opening up until later on. It was harder for him to want to get help. I don't know if it's his pride, his stubbornness of not wanting to, or shame, not wanting to confess, not wanting to really bring those things in the past of his life that happened to him. And so, because he told me of his abuse when he was younger, not until like when our contract was almost over.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, what? Like, I didn't know you went through that. But that definitely gave me a lot of compassion towards him and patience. But when he brought in the divorce papers, we got into a really bad argument. And it was over something so small. And I remember him losing so much of his temper and just being filled with rage. And I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, why is he like screaming? Why is he in this state? Like, what's going on with him? And so he tells me, I'm going to go get divorce papers. And I'm like, sure. Okay. You know, like whatever. And then the next day he comes in and I go in the office and there's like papers there. And I'm like, what are these papers doing here? And it says like divorce papers. And I grab them and I go to him and I'm like, what is this? You know, what is this all about? And he's all like, oh, this is something I want to talk to you about. And I couldn't take him seriously. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, you know, so he's like trying to sit me down over it. So we're sitting down there and he's like, yeah, there's these options in divorce, you know, when, you know, you either sign it and it's quicker, or you don't sign and it's going to be problem and it's going to be more money and da. And I grabbed those divorce papers and I ripped them in front of him. I'm like, I'm not getting no divorce paper. I'm not getting no divorce. I'm not signing anything. I'm like, I'm a Christian. I'm going to die a Christian. I'm going to die married. Like, I start going off on him. And I start screaming at him like, you're crazy. What are you? Aren't you a Christian? Like, why are you thinking like this? Just go get help. I'm like, you really are going to do this? Like, you're going to ruin your life? Go get help. Like, you know? And so I'm angry. I'm like, why would you even think about this stuff? You know? And so super frustrated with him. And I call his sergeant. I'm like, hey, like, I don't want him in the house. Like, go put him somewhere else. You know, I don't want him to be here. Like, we're fighting and I don't want this to get worse. Right. Mm-hmm. So they come and they arrest him. And I'm like, why did you guys arrest him? They're like, well, by your story, we need to arrest him because it sounds like there's something more, you know? And I'm like, and so he's thinking that I told them to come and arrest him, but I didn't, you know? And so I had to clarify that with him, like, during that time. But it was just something that I was like, no, I just needed some, like, we just need space because, you know, we're not seeing eye to eye, you know, we just need time away, you know, because I don't want my son to be around here and he sees us arguing, he sees us fighting. I don't want Hosea to see this. He's getting older. He's 4 now, you know, and so during this time, the military puts us into this therapy. So the military is like, you know, y'all just need to get therapy, go into therapy. And so we're sitting in the therapy and I stopped talking to Glad. I'm very mad at him for him bringing all those things and fighting with me. And luckily we have a sister and a brother that live down the street where we live, and they're military too, Christians. And they kind of knew like what was going on between us. Like, we told them, hey, we're fighting, you know? Yeah. So they're like, hey, Glad, if you want, just be with us for a little bit. Stay with us until you know, Glad, you get help, you know, because that's one of the things that Glad, he just wouldn't get help, you know? And so, you know, I tell Ash, I'm like telling God, like, how many times do I need to forgive this guy? How many times do we need to go through this stuff? Like, how long is this going to keep on going, you know? And I'm getting frustrated with God because I'm like, God, I thought, you know, you're real, you're powerful, you're this, you're that. And I'm not seeing this in my marriage. You know, we're going through all of this stuff, you know?
You see Glad still struggling. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I tell my sister, I tell her, like, how many times do I gotta forgive him? He's not even a real Christian, you know. How is he bringing me divorce papers, you know, and all these things? And she's like, Yvette, be patient, you know, just pray for him. And God tells me forgive 70 times 70. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. You know?
Yeah.
And so so we're sitting in counseling, and I'm really mad. I'm really angry with Glad because of the divorce papers, because I feel super rejected.
Yes.
I feel so like, are you for real? Like, just super, I just feel really bad. And so we're sitting there, and our therapist, our military therapist, and so she asked Glad, he walks in, she's like, so what do you want to do? What y'all want to do? So I'm here waiting for Glad. Like, does he want to get divorced? Does he want to, what does he want to do? And he's all like, well, I've thought about it. I've never really gotten help before. So I'm thinking I'm going to get help. And I'm like, really? Like, all of this just for that, like all of these things for him to say, I'm going to get help. And in that moment, I wanted to be happy, but I couldn't, because I already felt hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I already felt rejected. And so he tells me towards the end, babe, I'm sorry for doing that. I want to get help. I thought about it. I've never gotten help. I've never shared to people, my issues. I've been hard towards you. I want to change. I want our life to get better. I want to live for the Lord. I want to trust in God. So he's like, for this time that I have, I'm going to work hard to work on our marriage and just live for God and get out of the military and just trust in the Lord. And financially, everything, like just trust in the Lord. And so I want to say I chose San Antonio because we tried getting out of we tried to get out. The reason why we had to get out of the military was because God tried to change his job, change, everything, but they just refused. They refused to let him change his career and change the location. They were like, if you're going to renew your contract, you have to stay in California. And I was like, I'm not going to raise my kids in California. Yeah. They're not going to be confused. And with me battling with the things that I battle with that demonic spirit, I'm like, no way. I'm not going to give my kids to Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to Texas, I was like, because this land is so corrupt. Yes. And there's principalities everywhere. I was like, I'm not gonna live in this principality. And so, and especially with everything that we've been through, I was like, I'm leaving. And so we came to San Antonio, and we ended up moving into the townhomes, and we were like, we need to get help. And while we were over there in California, we were going to AA, but for married couples towards the end. And so we were trying to look for that in like Christian churches, anything that would help marriages and counsel people. So those were the churches that we would go to. But some of them were very far, and some of them were really big, and it was kind of hard to connect with people, so my mom she came with us when we drove all the way from California to Texas. And so, so when she came with us, we were trying to look for a church, and she only speaks Spanish. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, what church are we going to go to, and my mom has to go back home, because I don't want her to be with us the whole time, we're here, we knew that we needed help, for the sake of our marriage, for the sake of our family making this big change. And so she's here, and I start praying to God. I'm like, God, I need you to put a man and a woman of God. It makes me cry. But I'm just praying to God. God, I need you to put someone who loves you, who's going to care for us, who's going to love on us, you know, who understands, who won't think we're crazy, you know.
Yes.
Because who's, experienced, and who will tell us, hey, y'all need to change. Y'all need to get it together, who will tell us the truth. And
so when you guys got the the flyer for the church, you guys decided to go try it out. Did you have the same thoughts that Glad did of like wow, where is this church? Where are the people?
I remember telling God,
give me a tissue.
I remember telling God, I need these people to be close to me. I need to be run over to their home. And if something happens, because I knew of the stuff that we've been through. Yeah. And I needed someone that I could trust. And so
how amazing is that God put you where he put you without you even knowing Camilo and Lulu yet, without getting that flyer yet, and you guys were already down the street.
Yeah. It's crazy. And so we end up going to their church. And we're like, where's everybody? And, I'm all like, okay, where's everybody? But I hear the word. I hear what pastor's talking about. And I'm like, this is what we need. I love what pastor is saying. He's saying the truth, because there's so many churches that will not tell you the truth, that will not convict you, that are too afraid to expose your sin. And so when I hear pastor preach, when I hear him talk, I'm like, this guy loves God, and he's not afraid to fluff up our feathers.
Yes.
And I'm like, I can't wait, for later on. I was like, I can't wait for him to deal with my husband. but I felt in the beginning, I was like very concerned, because I'm like, man, we don't have family here. We really need like a church family that would help us grow and be a godly example to my son, and not feel afraid, because I didn't want my son to feel afraid, and like, why are we here by ourselves, and so, but seeing
so then when Glad said that after you guys visited for the first time, that you guys like, that place is kind of weird, was that Glad mainly, or like because you said that you recognized that he was godly, or did you think it was a little weird because you guys were the only ones there?
Yes, it was weird, because I've never been to a church where, you're the only people there. I've never seen a church that just started. I was like, wow, this is how a church starts. It starts like this.
And then when they invited you guys out to fellowship and this and that, and you found out they lived, down the street from you, did it click right away? They're like, oh wow, this is exactly what I prayed for. Or not really?
Yes and no. So yes, to the aspect of these people are close and I'm going to be able to trust them. But is this the church that God wants us to be in? For sure, didn't click to me yet. Not until God was like, seek first, and then everything will be added on to you. Right? And I think that a lot of people don't get that. Seek first, and then it will be added. I think a lot of people want the other way around. Everything will be added, and then God. But it's not that way. It's sacrificial. And so for me, it didn't hit me until pastor would say stuff like, don't expect God to be faithful if you're not faithful. And God honors the sacrifice. And not until Glad and I started sacrificing did we see fruit in our lives. And that's when it started hitting me like, okay. And like certain preachings that I was like, okay, God, it it starts ministering to me. It starts giving me peace, you know. And so not until I have peace am I sure of what am I doing, of the choices, of saying, yes, this is it, you know. So not until then was when I was like, okay, this is the place. This is where God wants me to be.
Okay. And what does your mom think?
My mom's in awe. You know, I'm in awe. We're all like excited. When I saw Pastor Camilo and Lulu, I was like, God, even though I didn't know them, I'm like, God's going to do amazing things in these people's lives. And I want to see it. I know it's going to happen. But I'm going to be a witness to it, and I can't wait.
Be a part of it.
Yeah. And I feel honored to be a part of this. You know, I don't feel burdened at all. I feel honored. And I feel like God has done so much. God is faithful, and he has saved me. You know, I'm indebted to him. My marriage was a mess. And God saved that. I have to do everything for the Lord. I mean, I would be dumb if I didn't sacrifice, you know, if I didn't love, and if I didn't serve his people, you know, and so in his work, his kingdom.
Well, I think what's powerful about both of you guys' testimony is that you guys both had church experiences, God experiences, but it wasn't until, like you said, you truly sacrificed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And had that servant heart and wanting to do more and be involved more.
Yeah.
Because you guys, you know, had your religious experience, you had your relationship with God, but you still had all the issues. You still had all the, you know, the compromises. You still had the drama, the fighting, you know what I mean? So it wasn't until you made the decision, no, we need to sacrifice everything and put God first.
And because our God before was the military. Our God before was Glad's career. You know, that's who we trust. And not until we saw, no, we don't trust this. We can't trust this. We're going to keep getting like just, you know, going like just being a mess. Not until God's like, trust me in faith, then you will see the fruit. Then you will see my hand. And we need to trust, you know, God sent the Israelites, like, they didn't know. They didn't see the land.
You're right, yes.
They had to go and leave everything behind to the things that made them slaves. You know, it's so.
Well, even you talking about that, you know, when God is talking to Jeremiah about, you know, taking the people out and the punishment that's going to come to them.
Yes.
You know, he says, I will bring them back and I will show them, I will give them purpose. And the purpose is going to be to serve me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's like throughout the Bible, you notice, okay, it's reiterated over and over. Trust God with all your heart. Follow God with all your heart. And that's it. Everything is going to follow. Everything will fall into place.
Yes. I think that no shade, but a lot of churches, it's your life and God is
He needs to be the center of everything that we do. So in our marriages,
yes,
in our relationships with other people, with our kids, everything has to be centered around God.
Yeah.
Every decision we make has to be centered around
not the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like us and then God just kind of fluffs it up for us and makes it nice.
It's never going to work.
Yeah.
Especially if you're called to be a priesthood. Because everyone does have a different calling. But who are you? You know, and I don't think Glad and I knew who we were. But when God calls you to be a priesthood, you are to be set apart for him. And if you try to do other things, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening to us. Nothing worked until we were finally set apart for him. That's what made sense. That's not until we said, okay, God, we're going to go under you. We're going to trust you. Were we able to flourish? We were never able to flourish anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, and there's that cycle again, but a different cycle. Yeah. How, when Glad told you, hey, I think I have a calling to preach, what did you think?
So in the beginning, I was like, are you calling you or is God calling you? Because I honestly, I was more like, wow, okay, God. Because, I started hearing all these testimonies because before I said, hey, no, people would say, oh, Glad you're going to preach, or, Pastor Glad, I'm like, no, he needs deliverance first. He needs to repent first, But when I heard Pastor Camilo's testimony, I was like, if God could use him, God could use anybody. And so it gave me vision and hope for my husband.
I think that's a big deal, right? When you see a lot of the pastors in our church, in our fellowship, it's that their past that they had, it kind of gives you hope. Like, wow, they had that life, and now they're pastoring. Where like Glad had mentioned in his podcast that his idea was, kind of this elite were the ones that were the pastors. You know what I mean? Like the ones that went to the colleges and had all the degrees. And it kind of seems unattainable for a lot of people. It's like, I'll never achieve that. You know what I mean? So it kind of keeps you stifled. But when you see somebody like Pastor Camilo, and it's like, wow, you came out of that and you're pastoring and you can see the anointing on your life, then that gives you hope in yourself and said and Glad.
Well, I think even Glad kind of touched on this too, but it's like when you see it like that way, it's like, oh, you're relying on yourself. Oh, I have to go to college. I have to learn this, instead of you want to be a minister of God. You need to let God move through you, and the discipleship that, the Holy Spirit will guide you, whatever, you know what I mean? And obviously your pastor's discipleship and stuff like that too, but it's not by you book learning. It's by God leading you. Yeah.
And going through everything that Glad and I went through in our marriage, honestly, it deterred my love for the Lord. It deterred my faithfulness and passion for him. And not until I came to the fellowship was my love for God rekindled and burned up again. Like when I first gave my life to Jesus.
When in your youth. Yeah.
Because I was given hope again.
Yes.
But this time for my marriage.
Yeah.
And before I just saw a mess. And so that's something that I value so much, and I'm so grateful for that. My love for God, my passion for God, my ability to serve the Lord with a passionate heart was rekindled, because before I would have never seen myself doing anything for the Lord. And like I never saw myself playing an instrument. I never saw myself doing that. And I'm just like, wow, God, like you're so amazing. You're so, like, you take like the ashes and you turn them to beauty.
Yes.
So is it are you like Glad where it seems like so long ago?
Yeah.
Right? Then all the drama and the mess, like this last year, you can just see the progression in your marriage.
Yeah.
Your relationship, where you're just like, wow, you can see what God has done.
Yeah. And my husband is so, like, he's filled with life, because I remember in the military, he would just come home and he looked dead. He looked tired and beat up. And now I see him like, wow, he looks like he's glowing. He's radiant. And when he prays, the way that he's patient with me, the way that he's changed, I'm just like, wow, God, you've done so much. You've changed him so much, And so
it's that purpose again, right?
Yeah.
He was looking for purpose in life. You were looking for purpose in life. You guys came here. I mean, because it's, I've been to the big churches. It's easy to get lost, right? You go to the big churches, you just show up, you sit down, you don't talk to anybody, you leave. That's it, right? So in the smaller churches like this, I mean, you guys were the only ones. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can get involved more and have more of a purpose and feel like, wow, I'm actually making a difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have a powerful testimony. thank you for coming on and sharing it with us.
Yes.
Before we go, is there any last words of advice you would like to give a young girl who's gone through what you've gone through?
Yes.
Feeling the same things you felt?
Never lose hope, no matter how dark it feels, no matter what the situation is. Know that God could flip it in one moment. Mm-hmm. Keep holding on to God, because he's the most valuable thing in life. He changes everything, and nothing is too much for God. Nothing is too big of a problem for God that he cannot change. So keep on hoping on Jesus.
Just put him first.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Ivette.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next time. Thanks.
Yes, bye.
So my mom stayed at the house with us, and I remember he would sometimes want to come over to come see us, but my mom was like, she didn't want to let us come outside. So my dad would come home, sometimes come over, and he'd be sometimes still kind of drunk, and he'd be like banging on the windows, like, let me in and stuff like that.
He's
Yeah, and so my mom would sometimes still have to call the cops. And I remember one time, like, he came over and he was drunk, and he was like, I just want to see my kids, and he was banging on the windows and stuff, and I was like, no, like, I'm gonna call the cops from his work, as I guess he didn't have a car at the time. And we'd see him walking, and we saw him walking towards us. So me and my brother were like kind of scared of him. So we ran to the back, and he kind of chased us. Like he got there pretty fast. And we where we used to live at, there was a like apartment complex in the backyard, and they had a privacy fence, and then it was our chain link fence to our yard, and they had like a private fence where you can like kind of like, I guess some of the fence was kind of torn, so you could kind of like squeeze through there and try to like go to the other side of the apartments in the back. Mm-hmm. And I guess he caught us to where we're in between the gates, so he started like slamming the gates, like against us,
like smashing you.
Yeah, he was smashing me and my brother. We're like, like he was just like that, like just real mean, just real cold blooded. Like, yeah, just mean. I guess he became our stepfather too. I'm sorry I didn't say that, but yeah, they got married.
That's a big detail.
I just thought about that right now. They got, because it's been a while since I've actually thought about it, but
yeah,
they got married. Yeah, they got married.
Because how old were you when you had your son?
I was about like 21, maybe.
Okay, so it was a little right before you met her, around the time you met her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you ready for a kid at that age?
Nah.
I mean, with all the partying you were doing, were you?
Nah, I wasn't ready, yeah. Well, she told me, like, I mean, she couldn't have kids or something like that, and so it just happened, it's just... Yeah, she's like, I can't have kids, and I was like, oh, okay. And so I thought
you fell for that.
Yeah, she got me, but I mean, I love my son, like I don't.
Of course.
It's just happened, It's I don't, so it's just she did. She would cry, like she would call me crying. She'd be like, where you at? And I would answer for a little bit, and I'll be like, I'll be back later. Like I'm not. I'll talk to you later, and I would just hang up with her. And I wouldn't answer the phone, and she put up. I still ask her to today. I'm like, man, how did you put up with me? Because somebody would have already left me a long time ago. Like I put it through that for years, like the same. Like I was very unstable. Like I was have job from job. Like I was like dead end jobs, like temp jobs. Mm-hmm. I was like sometimes I wouldn't even be able to pay the rent. Like we'd have to like move out because I wasn't able to pay the rent, or I would always have to be asking like our parents for money and stuff like that too. Or we'd get like a light bill, like like the red letter on the door, like you have to pay your light. Just not a good example to my kids or my wife. Like I couldn't sleep, like I wasn't sleeping at night. Like I was just since that day I wouldn't sleep at night. Like I wouldn't sleep probably like about 1 hour.
Oh wow. So
she's like, let's go to the doctor, and then so they took me to, because we weren't going to church or nothing like that, so I didn't know what I know now, but it was something. It was spiritual or something. Yeah. So because I wasn't living right, and she took me, like we went to like a psychologist, and he's like, yeah, they died. He's like, what's wrong? And he started telling me. I ain't never been to a psychologist before, so I was just kind of like, I actually had. Oh no, they gave me a number to call from my job. They said call a counselor, and they're gonna see what they can do to you. So I didn't know. I was like, let me call the counselor. And they're like, we're going to give you a number to the psychologist or something like that. And they were trying to talk to me, like what was wrong with me, whatever. And I went to the psychologist. I made an appointment, and then they're like, "Yeah, we're diagnosing you with major depression and what do you call it, insomnia or something like that." Everybody was already like almost giving up on me, kind of like, what are we gonna do with them? You know, like he's just there, like he doesn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't have a haircut. My hair was like, it was a big afro. You know, It was bad. Like it was.
What would you do? Like, would you just literally?
I would just kind of like just lay on the couch, just kind of look around, like. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go anywhere.
Would you think about stuff, or like not even really? Like you can, like it wasn't like you were contemplating or something, or
it was crazy. Like
you're just a zombie, right? These
kind of like zombie-ish, kind of like just like it was crazy, man. Like just like crazy battle minds, like just like I don't know, man. Just I felt like it was in my head. Like it was just I don't know. It was crazy. Like
so, were you still partying at this time too, or you didn't want to?
After that, like I stopped. Yeah, no more alcohol. I didn't do nothing. Like I stopped. I didn't want to party or nothing, man. I was just like out of it. Like just, it was weird. Like I was zombied out, like you said. Like
so
it was crazy.
How long did that go on for?
He's like, "Are you tired of being the way you are? You know, are you tired of being like, you know, broken? Are you tired of just like?" I just felt like God was pulling me, man. Like he's like, he put an altar call, and I was just like, man, I need to hit that altar, man. And so, I went up to the altar, and I was just broken, man. Mm-hmm. And then Ivette, brother from Pastor Ruby's, I think he's a pastor now. Ivette. He's like, "You feel that?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I could feel something inside. Like, I don't know how to explain it at the time. I know what it is now. And then he's like, "That's the Holy Spirit." And I was like, oh.
So when she started going to the church and she got saved and stuff, then did you notice a big difference with your marriage?
Oh yeah, way different.
I mean, like, cause she quit all the partying and trying to do all that stuff too. So now you guys can finally focus on God together and
our kids
and your kids together, raising them the right way.
Yes.
So how was that